If you had asked me a year ago who I trusted most in this world, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. It was always Linda. We met in the 3rd grade, 2 shy girls with mismatched socks and a shared love for library books. From that first day, we became inseparable. The kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Our bond was the thread that wove through every chapter of my life. Birthday parties, heartbreaks, weddings, and funerals. Linda was there for all of it. Her hand always reaching for mine. Her voice always steady when mine trembled. We had our rituals, little things that made our friendship feel sacred. Every Sunday we'd meet at the old bakery on Main Street, splitting a cinnamon roll and gossiping about everything and nothing. On rainy days we'd curl up on my couch, watching black and white movies and making up ridiculous backstories for the characters. Our inside jokes could fill a book, like the time we got locked in the school gym overnight and swore we'd seen a ghost, or how we called each other Thelma and Louise, even though neither of us had ever driven off a cliff. Linda was the first person I called when I got my dream job, and the only one who knew how scared I was to become a mother. She held my hand through labor, and I held hers when her marriage fell apart. We promised each other, over and over, that nothing would ever come between us. I believed it with all my heart. Our trust felt unbreakable, forged in the fires of shared secrets and silent understanding. Looking back now, I realize how much I took for granted. I thought we were unshakable, that nothing, not time, not distance, not even the world's temptations, could ever pull us apart. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, and as I sit here remembering those golden years, I can't help but wonder, did I miss the signs? Was there a moment when everything started to change, and I just didn't see it? If only I'd known what was coming, maybe I could have stopped it. But the truth is, nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. It started so quietly, I almost didn't notice. At first it was just a few missed calls, Linda forgetting to return my messages, or texting back hours later with a quick distracted apology. "Sorry, work's been crazy," she'd say, or, "You know how it is with the kids." I believed her, of course. We were both busy women, juggling families, jobs, and the endless demands of adulthood. But still something felt different. The easy rhythm of our friendship, the one I'd always counted on, was suddenly offbeat. Then there were the secretive meetings. I'd call to invite her for coffee, and she'd say she already had plans. Sometimes I'd spot her across town, sitting in a cafe with people I didn't recognize, young, stylish women with perfect hair and phones glued to their hands. When I'd ask about it later, she'd wave it off. "Just some new friends from work," she'd say, her eyes darting away. I tried not to let it bother me. After all, people change, right? We grow, we meet new people, we find new interests. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being left behind. The biggest change, though, was Linda's sudden obsession with social media. She'd never cared much for it before. She used to joke that she was too old for all that nonsense. But now she was constantly posting photos, sharing stories, and chasing likes. Her Instagram feed was a highlight reel of glamorous dinners, trendy outfits, and smiling faces. Faces that, more and more, didn't include me. She started talking about building her brand and growing her following, using words that felt foreign coming from her lips. I tried to be supportive, liking her posts and leaving encouraging comments, but deep down, I missed the Linda who used to laugh at silly cat videos with me, not the one who seemed to be performing for an invisible audience. I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe she was going through something, or maybe I was just being oversensitive. I clung to our old memories, replaying them in my mind like a favorite song. I reminded myself of all the times we'd been there for each other, all the promises we'd made. Surely nothing could come between us, not even a few new friends or a fancy Instagram account. But the distance kept growing, and with it, a quiet ache in my chest. I started to wonder if I was losing her little by little to a world I didn't understand, Then one evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, a notification popped up. A message from Linda, but it wasn't meant for me. My heart pounded as I read the first line, realizing in that instant that everything was about to change. I wish I could say I saw it coming, that I was prepared, or at least braced myself for the blow. But nothing in all our years of friendship could have prepared me for the way Linda betrayed me. So publicly, so deliberately, and with such cold calculation that I still feel the sting when I close my eyes. It happened on a Saturday afternoon, the kind of day we used to spend together, laughing over pastries and coffee. Instead, I was at home, folding laundry, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Linda is live now. I almost ignored it, but curiosity, and maybe a little longing, got the better of me. I tapped the screen, expecting to see her familiar smile. Maybe a cooking demo, or a chat about her latest thrift store find. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. Linda was sitting in a bright, stylish kitchen, one that looked suspiciously like the set I'd helped her design for her new online series. She was surrounded by a group of young influencers, all of them hanging on her every word. The chat was exploding with hearts and fire emojis, and then, as if on cue, Linda launched into a story. My story. She started talking about her journey, about how she'd come up with a unique idea for a community cookbook that brought together local families and their favorite recipes. She described the project in detail, every detail, in fact, that I had shared with her in confidence. The late nights we'd spent brainstorming, the recipes I'd tested in my own kitchen, the outreach I'd done to gather stories from our neighbors. She spoke as if it had all been her idea, her effort, her vision. I sat there, frozen, as she smiled for the camera and accepted praise from her audience. "You're so inspiring, Linda," someone commented. "What a brilliant idea," another wrote. Linda beamed, soaking in the adoration, never once mentioning my name. Not a single word about the friend who had stood by her side, who had poured her heart into the project because she believed in Linda's dreams as much as her own. But it didn't stop there. As the conversation turned to overcoming obstacles, Linda's tone shifted. She started talking about toxic people who tried to hold her back, who doubted her abilities and tried to steal her spotlight. She didn't say my name, but the implication was clear. She described someone who was jealous, unsupportive, and stuck in the past. The chat lit up with sympathy and encouragement, and I felt my cheeks burn with shame and disbelief. I wanted to scream, to type out the truth in all caps for everyone to see, but my hands shook too much to even hold my phone. I watched as Linda's follower count ticked upward, as her new friends cheered her on, as the world seemed to celebrate her success while I sat alone in my living room, feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. The betrayal was so complete, so public, that it left me gasping for air. This wasn't just a misunderstanding or a petty argument. This was a calculated move, a performance designed to erase me from the story we'd built together and cast herself as the hero. The contrast between the Linda I thought I knew and the woman on that screen was almost too much to bear. After the live stream ended, my phone buzzed with messages. Some were from mutual friends, confused and concerned. Others were from people I barely knew, asking if what Linda said was true. I didn't know how to answer. I felt exposed, humiliated, and utterly alone. The trust I'd held onto for so long had been shattered in front of an audience of thousands. That night, I lay awake replaying every moment, every conversation, every sign I'd ignored. I wondered how long Linda had been planning this, how many times she'd smiled to my face while plotting to take everything we'd built and make it her own. I wanted to believe there was some explanation, some reason that would make sense of the pain. But deep down I knew the truth. The friend I loved was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized, and yet, even as I grieved the loss of our friendship, a new feeling began to take root, something sharp and electric. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry, and I knew in that moment that I couldn't let Linda's version of the story be the last word. I had to find out why she did it, and what else she was hiding. The days that followed felt like a slow-motion car crash, one I couldn't escape, no matter how tightly I closed my eyes. At first, I tried to ignore the notifications piling up on my phone, the pings and dings that once brought me joy, but now filled me with dread. But curiosity, or maybe just a desperate need to know, got the better of me. I scrolled through the comments on Linda's live stream, my heart sinking with every cruel word. People I'd never met called me bitter, jealous, a has-been clinging to someone else's success. Some of Linda's new followers even found my own social media pages, leaving snide remarks and laughing emojis under my old photos. Maybe you should try supporting your friends instead of dragging them down, one message read. Another simply said, "No wonder she left you behind." Each comment was a tiny cut, and together they left me raw and bleeding. But the worst part wasn't the strangers. It was the silence from people I loved. My sister, who had always adored Linda, called me with a hesitant voice. "Are you sure you're not just overreacting?" she asked, her words careful as if I might shatter. My husband tried to comfort me, but I could see the doubt flicker in his eyes. Even my own children, who had grown up calling Linda Auntie, seemed confused by the sudden rift. I felt like I was losing not just my best friend, but my entire support system. I started to question everything. Was I really the problem? Had I been holding Linda back, as she claimed? I replayed every memory, searching for moments when I might have been unsupportive or selfish. The more I thought about it, the more I began to doubt my own version of events. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was just jealous of her newfound confidence and success. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the echo of Linda's words and the laughter of her new friends. I missed her so much it hurt, a physical ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I missed our Sunday mornings, our silly jokes, the way she always knew what to say when I was feeling low. I missed the person I used to be when I was with her, someone who felt seen, valued, and loved. I thought about reaching out, about sending one last message to try and fix things. But every time I picked up my phone, my hands trembled. What would I even say? How could I compete with the shiny new world Linda had built for herself, a world where I was nothing but a footnote? Just as I was about to give up, ready to delete my social media accounts, crawl into bed, and let the world move on without me, a new message appeared in my inbox. It was from an account I didn't recognize, with no profile picture and a name I'd never seen before. The subject line was simple. "You don't know the whole story." Inside was a single sentence. "If you want the truth about Linda, meet me at the old bakery tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come alone." My heart pounded in my chest. Was this some kind of cruel joke, or was it the lifeline I so desperately needed? For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this story than I realized, and I knew I had to find out. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with questions and possibilities. By the time the sun rose, I was already dressed, pacing the kitchen with a mug of untouched coffee in my hands. The old bakery had always been our place, mine and Linda's. The thought of meeting a stranger there, of dredging up more pain, made my stomach twist. But the message had ignited something in me, a stubborn spark that refused to be snuffed out by fear or humiliation. At 9:55, I parked across the street and watched the bakery's door, my heart thudding in my chest. The world outside seemed unchanged, people hurrying by, the scent of fresh bread drifting on the breeze. But inside, everything felt different. I stepped through the door, scanning the room for anyone who looked out of place. At first I saw no one. Then, in the far corner, a woman waved me over. She wore sunglasses and a scarf, her face half hidden, but there was something familiar about her. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I can't stay long, but you need to see this. I hesitated, my fingers trembling as I opened the envelope. Inside were printouts, screenshots of messages, photos, and what looked like financial records. My eyes darted over the pages, confusion giving way to shock. There were emails between Linda and a man named Greg, someone I vaguely remembered from a networking event months ago. In the messages, Greg promised Linda introductions to key influencers and brand deals, but only if she could deliver something unique. The tone was transactional, cold. Linda's replies were eager, almost desperate. There were also photos of Linda at private parties, always with the same group of people, the same faces I'd seen on her social media, the ones who had replaced me. But what caught my attention most was a series of payments from a company I'd never heard of, deposited into Linda's account just days before her live stream. The amounts were staggering, far more than she'd ever made at her old job. I looked up at the woman, my voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" She hesitated, then pulled off her sunglasses. It was Marcy, a mutual acquaintance from our book club, someone I'd always thought of as quiet, even shy. "I used to work for Greg," she said, her voice trembling. "He's not who he pretends to be. He finds people like Linda, people who want more, who are willing to do anything for a taste of fame. He manipulates them, uses them, and then moves on to the next." My mind reeled. "But why Linda? Why me?" Marcy's eyes softened. "Because you had something real. Your cookbook idea, your community connections. Greg saw potential. He convinced Linda she deserved the spotlight, that you were holding her back. He promised her everything she ever wanted, but only if she cut you out." I felt sick. The betrayal wasn't just Linda's. It was orchestrated, calculated. I thought of all the times Linda had seemed distracted, the secretive meetings, the sudden influx of new friends. It all made sense now, but in the worst possible way. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Because I know what it's like to be used," Marcy said softly, "and because you deserve the truth. But be careful. Greg doesn't like loose ends." As she stood to leave, she pressed a small flash drive into my hand. "Everything you need is on here, but you have to decide what to do with it." I sat there long after Marcy left, the envelope and flash drive heavy in my lap. My mind raced with anger, confusion, and a growing sense of resolve. Linda hadn't just betrayed me for fame. She'd been manipulated, pushed into a corner by someone who saw us both as pawns in his game. But she'd made her choices, and so had I. I knew what I had to do. I would confront Linda, not just for myself, but for the truth. The stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined, and the betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever feared. But I wasn't the same woman who'd sat alone in her living room, paralyzed by shame. I was ready to fight for my story, for my dignity, and for the truth that had been stolen from me. I spent the next day in a haze, rehearsing what I would say, my anger and heartbreak swirling together until I could barely tell them apart. I kept replaying Linda's face in my mind, the friend I'd loved, the woman who'd betrayed me, and now, the person at the center of a web I barely understood. The evidence Marcy had given me felt like a burning coal in my pocket, heavy with the weight of everything I'd lost and everything I still needed to know. I texted Linda, asking to meet. She replied almost immediately, suggesting the park where we used to walk our dogs. The familiarity of the place only made the tension worse. As I waited on a weathered bench beneath the old oak tree, I tried to steady my breathing, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Linda arrived, looking tired and thinner than I remembered. Her eyes darted around nervously before she sat beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick with everything unsaid. Finally, I pulled the envelope and flash drive from my bag and placed them on the bench between us. "I know about Greg. I know about the money, the deals, the messages. I know you didn't do this alone, Linda, but I need to hear it from you. Why did you do it?" Her face crumpled, and for a second I saw the old Linda, the one who used to laugh with me until we cried. But then the mask slipped and she looked away, her voice barely more than a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't, but I didn't have a choice. I felt my anger flare. You always have a choice, Linda. You could have talked to me. You could have told me the truth instead of humiliating me in front of everyone. Tears welled in her eyes and she shook her head. You don't understand, Greg. He found out about my brother, about the trouble he got into last year. He threatened to ruin him, to go to the police, unless I did what he wanted. He said if I didn't cut you out, if I didn't make the cookbook mine, he'd destroy my family. I tried to fight him, but he just kept pushing. I was so scared. And then the money started coming in, and I thought maybe I could fix everything if I just went along for a little while longer. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd imagined so many scenarios, greed, jealousy, ambition, but never this. I stared at her, my anger dissolving into something messier and more painful. Why didn't you tell me? We could have figured it out together. We always did. Linda wiped her eyes, her hands trembling. I was ashamed. I thought if you knew, you'd hate me. And then it just got bigger and bigger, and I didn't know how to stop. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to lose you. For a long moment, we just sat there. Two women bound by years of friendship, and now, by a secret that had nearly destroyed us both. I wanted to scream, to cry, to hug her and push her away all at once. Instead, I took a shaky breath and said, This isn't over, Linda, not by a long shot. But if you're ready to fight back, so am I. She nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest glimmer of the trust we'd once shared. The truth was out, but the real battle was just beginning. The days that followed our confrontation felt like stepping into a new world. One where Linda and I were no longer enemies, but allies bound by a shared wound. The pain was still there, raw and aching, but it was joined by something else, a fierce determination to reclaim our story and expose the person who had tried to destroy us both. We started by piecing together everything we knew. Linda handed over her phone, her laptop, even her old notebooks, anything that might hold a clue. I pored over the files Marcy had given me, cross-referencing names and dates, looking for patterns. The more we dug, the clearer it became that Greg was just a puppet, a front for someone who knew us both far too well. It was a single email that finally cracked the case. Buried in Linda's inbox was a message from an address that looked almost familiar, but not quite. The tone was different, colder, more personal. The sender referenced details only someone close to us would know. The bakery, our Sunday rituals, even the nickname Thelma and Louise. My blood ran cold as I realized who it was. It was Marcy. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Marcy, the quiet book club member, the one who had handed me the evidence and warned me about Greg. It didn't make sense, until I remembered all the times she'd lingered at the edge of our conversations, the way she'd always seemed to know more than she let on. She had been watching us for years, quietly collecting information, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Linda's face went pale as I showed her the email. But why? What did we ever do to her? I thought back to the early days of our friendship, to the time Marcy had tried to join our little circle. We hadn't meant to exclude her, but our bond was so tight, so effortless, that there was never really room for anyone else. I remembered the look on her face when we'd laughed at an inside joke she didn't understand. The way she drifted away, always on the outside looking in. She wanted what we had, I said quietly, and when she couldn't have it, she decided to take it apart. The realization was both horrifying and strangely liberating. For so long I'd blamed myself, wondering what I could have done differently. Now I saw the truth. We had been targeted, manipulated by someone who envied our friendship and saw an opportunity to profit from our pain. Armed with this knowledge, Linda and I made a plan. We gathered every piece of evidence, emails, bank statements, messages, and the flash drive Marcy had given me. We reached out to a local journalist, someone I trusted from my work in the community, and told her everything. She listened in stunned silence, then promised to help us bring the truth to light. The next week was a whirlwind. The journalist published a detailed exposé, complete with screenshots and interviews. The story spread quickly, and suddenly the narrative shifted. People who had mocked me online began to apologize. Old friends reached out, offering support and sharing their own stories of betrayal. Even Linda's family, who had doubted her, rallied around her with a new understanding. But the most powerful moment came when Linda and I stood together at the bakery, facing Marcy one last time. She tried to deny everything at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her mask slipped, and for a moment I saw the lonely, wounded woman beneath the scheming exterior. I felt a pang of pity, but I knew we couldn't let her off the hook. "We're not your victims anymore," I told her, my voice steady. "You tried to break us, but all you did was remind us how strong we are, together." Linda squeezed my hand, and for the first time in months I felt whole again. The devastation Marcy had caused was real, but it had also forged something unbreakable between us, a new bond, tempered by fire and truth. As we walked out of the bakery, heads held high, I realized that the story wasn't just about betrayal or loss. It was about reclaiming our voices, our dignity, and our friendship. We had been broken, yes, but we had also been remade, stronger and wiser than before, and as the sun streamed through the bakery windows, I knew that no one, not even someone as cunning as Marcy, could ever take that away from us again. The days after the truth came out felt like waking up from a long, heavy dream. For the first time in months, I could walk down Main Street without feeling the weight of whispered rumors or sideways glances. People stopped me in the grocery store, at the post office, even in the church parking lot. Not to judge, but to offer hugs, kind words, and sometimes even apologies. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed the warmth of my community until it came flooding back, washing away the bitterness that had settled in my heart. Linda and I spent long hours talking, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, always honest in a way we hadn't been for years. She apologized again and again, not just for what she'd done, but for not trusting me enough to share her burden. I listened, and I forgave her, not because what she did was right, but because I understood the fear and desperation that had driven her. We both knew things would never be exactly as they were before, but in some ways, that was a blessing. Our friendship was no longer built on blind trust, but on hard-won truth and mutual respect. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about forgetting or pretending the pain never happened. It's about setting boundaries, learning from the past, and choosing to move forward with open eyes and a stronger heart. I realized I'd spent so much of my life trying to be everything to everyone, always the peacemaker, always the one who put others first. This experience taught me the importance of protecting my own peace, of speaking up when something feels wrong, and of trusting my instincts even when it's uncomfortable. Linda, for her part, was determined to make amends. She reached out to the people she'd hurt, told her story publicly, and used her platform to warn others about the dangers of manipulation and toxic ambition. She even started a support group for women who had been targeted by online scams and social media predators, turning her pain into a source of strength for others. Watching her grow and change, I felt a deep sense of pride, not just in her, but in both of us. Together, we rebuilt our lives, one small step at a time. We brought back our Sunday mornings at the bakery, this time inviting others to join us, opening our circle instead of closing it off. We worked on the community cookbook again, this time as true partners, giving credit where it was due and celebrating every contribution. The project became a symbol of our healing, a patchwork of stories, recipes, and resilience. Looking back, I wouldn't wish this ordeal on anyone. But I also wouldn't trade the lessons I learned or the strength I found in myself. Betrayal broke me, but truth and forgiveness put me back together piece by piece. And as I watched Linda greet a new friend at the bakery, her laughter ringing out like it used to, I knew we were both exactly where we were meant to be. Wiser, braver, and finally free. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's that trust is both a gift and a responsibility. We give it freely to those we love, believing it will be cherished and protected. But sometimes, even the strongest bonds are tested by ambition, fear, or the influence of others. When that happens, it's easy to lose faith, not just in others, but in ourselves. I've learned that true friendship isn't about perfection or never making mistakes. It's about honesty, forgiveness, and the courage to face hard truths together. Ambition can be a beautiful thing when it lifts us up, but when it turns into envy or manipulation, it can destroy everything in its path. The real strength lies in knowing when to set boundaries, when to speak up, and when to let go of what no longer serves us. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed, please know you're not alone. Healing takes time, and it's okay to grieve what you've lost. But don't let someone else's actions define your worth or your future. You have the power to rebuild, to forgive, and to find joy again, even if it looks different than before. I'd love to hear your stories. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did you find your way back to yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's support each other and remind ourselves that we're stronger together. In the end, the truth set me free, not just from the pain of betrayal, but from the fear of starting over. And if you're standing at the edge of your own heartbreak, I hope you'll take that first step toward healing. You deserve it. We all do.